As a daughter of immigrant parents, I am ashamed of what the Biden and Harris administration has done to our country by opening our borders to all, including criminals, who are wolves in sheep's clothing. Doctor, I heard you mention that over 115,000 people are missing in Mexico. I know. One of those people is my cousin, and all of my family lives in Mexico. We have to comprehend that the majority of those are women, and there's a word that is used in Mexico, and it's called femicidio, and that's called femicide, the act of being murdered just because you are a woman. It is unimaginable for us to think that alongside those seeking refuge are not the same people that are there to victimize them, and alongside victimized citizens as well. I have personally worked 3 cases within the city of Houston where little girls were targeted simply because they were young, beautiful, and vulnerable, and of course, underage. Predators have an appetite for children. And in all these cases, there was an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old whose mom is here today, and a 16-year-old freshman in high school. I'm gonna be the voice today for Maria Gonzalez, who is also a migrant. She arrived here, and her father didn't own a vehicle. He walked to work. Her father is the essence of the type of immigrants we should want in this country. Law-abiding, hardworking man working for $7 an hour, 14 hours a day. He left that weekend and he told his daughter he was going to work. She had a cell phone. She was in the safety of her home. This migrant that came here as a child, crossed the border, was given to a sponsor and was only here 3 weeks before he decided to leave his sponsor's home, go to Pasadena, Texas from Louisiana, and he saw Maria. At one point or another, he decided that was gonna be his prey. He saw her father leave to work. He knew their schedule. He knocked on Maria's door. Maria, recognizing that it was a neighbor, told her father on WhatsApp on a voice message, "Hey dad, somebody's knocking on the door." And she said it in Spanish, "Papi, me estás tocando la puerta." Dad, is that you knocking on the door? Thinking her father had forgotten something. That was the last time he ever heard Maria's voice. When Maria went to the door, there's a little chain that we have in those apartments, right? When you open the door to try to keep us safe, that chain was not enough to keep this animal out of Maria's apartment. He pushed his way in, and Maria fought for her life. She was 11 years old. To all of you, 3 little girls passing away may not be many, but what if one of those little girls was your daughter, your granddaughter, or your niece? Can you imagine them trying to fight off a grown man off of them? The shock of being undressed, the pain of being beaten and smothered, trying to fight for your life while a predator's one objective is to use them to satisfy their sick and demented appetites. Our girls deserve protection. Our girls deserve to live their life without fear. Our girls deserve to perish in a natural manner of old age. We live in a society where we have gained so much medical advancements that if you have cholesterol, diabetes, heart disease, they will take care of you. But we're losing healthy children. And this case to me resonates because she's also a migrant child. And this says to me we're letting everything through the border because we're not checking them. And you're victimizing citizens, you're victimizing immigrants alike. We're not against immigration, we're against unvetted immigration. And I want you to know, as a woman who has a majority of their family in Mexico that are not privileged enough to be in this country, there's no such thing as collecting DNA swabs. There's no such thing as embalming. There's no such thing as doing a real autopsy like we do here. Mexico and Central America is where predators thrive. You think they come here to this country and it's the first time they do this? No. This is just a place where we figure it out and we care about our daughters. And we're gonna find out. Finding a little girl in Mexico that has been sexually assaulted is just a normal Tuesday. It's nothing unusual. So I want you to know, immigration is good. I am the living proof of that. My parents don't even have a speeding ticket. That's the type of migrants we want. But bringing them to this country, it's further victimizing what these same immigrants got away from in their countries. We have to have some form of check and balances, a real system to identify these criminals that are hiding in they're wolves in sheep's clothing is what they are. So I ask you, I implore you, close your eyes. I know you have a little girl in your family. Imagine somebody undressing her. Imagine somebody fighting her. Imagine somebody strangling her. Maria was so covered in bruises, I had to go and shop for a funeral dress for her to cover the damage that that man did to her. Maria lost fingernails in her fight, and she's a migrant child. Not everybody is the same, and we have to identify these monsters because, like my dad says, they're giving all of us good migrants such a bad name. We owe it to the migrants that are getting away from these communities, and we owe it to our citizens to offer them a safe society. People say, well, citizens kill too, but in these cases, all of these cases are migrants that cause this. And it's the failure of our policies by not checking them.
Good morning, members of the committee. I want to thank you all for having me here to share my daughter's story on how the current administration open border policies have affected us in Texas. I was 14 when I found out I was going to be a mom. I knew I was young and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I know I needed to do what was right, which was be the best mom I could be to my daughter. I fought for her. December 27th, 2011 was the day the rest of my life changed for the better. Jocelyn Lascelle Nungare was born. She was the happiest, chunkiest little baby. She grew up to have this spunky, quirky, funny, beautiful little 12-year-old young lady. She had a personality like no other. She was so caring, loving, thoughtful, one of the greatest friends you could ask for. She was so talented. She had the biggest dreams to be an actress, and she swore that she was going to be famous one day. It has been 2 months and 25 days today since my daughter has passed away. On Monday, June 17th, 2024, my daughter Jocelyn was murdered and thrown in a bayou of water underneath a creek. On that Sunday night before I went to bed, told Jocelyn goodnight, and I loved her. She was there when I closed my eyes that night, and that Monday morning when I opened my eyes, she was gone. She was a preteen, out doing what teenagers do, going to the corner store to get a soda. She was preyed on by 2 illegal Venezuelan immigrants. They saw an innocent young girl and made her a target for their horrendous actions. That Monday morning, June 17th, was terrifying, waking up to know your child was missing and frantically searching the area where her phone was being pinged just 2 minutes away from our home. Driving up to that exact location to see crime scene tape and officers by a bridge, my heart sank. I ran out of the car to the officers. I explained I woke up to my daughter missing and I don't know where she is, but her phone was pinging right where we were. They said they hadn't seen anything and they would let me know. Within 45 minutes, I received a phone call from a sergeant asking me to come downtown to discuss her whereabouts. I'm still hanging on the hope that my 12-year-old daughter is still somewhere out there. They bring me to the floor labeled Homicide Division. I didn't know what to think. After being taken to a room, speaking for about every minute I remember leading up to my last moments with her was when they had finally told me that the body where my daughter's Jocelyn's phone was being pinged, followed by seeing the photo I showed them, confirmed their suspicions, and they did believe the Jane Doe body that was found matched the picture of my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare. My heart shattered. I couldn't believe what was just told to me. A day after being told about my daughter, I was told they were going to need to release pictures of the illegal immigrants and my daughter from footage to the local news stations to help find who murdered my daughter, Jocelyn. They proceeded to tell me how my daughter was murdered. She was strangled to death. She had no clothing from the waist down. Her hands and her ankles were tied and thrown under the bridge of water like she was nothing but garbage. The community of Houston was the biggest support. Just 24 hours for them to be found, arrested, and charged with capital murder. Within those same hours, I received a phone call from the medical forensics confirming that the body was in fact my daughter, Jocelyn. The 2 illegal immigrants were Johan Jose Martinez Rangel, 22, and Franklin Pena Ramos, 26 years old. They're both Venezuelan natives. The Border Patrol apprehended Johan near El Paso on March 14th and was released that same day on an order of recognizance with a notice to appear. The Border Patrol also apprehended Franklin Pena on May 28th, also near El Paso. On that same day he was apprehended, a judge also ordered Franklin to appear in court at a later date. Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. They saw a young girl, my daughter, Jocelyn, and placed a target on her without her even knowing. They were seen on video at 12:57 a.m. on June 17th walking across the street down by the bayou under the bridge. At 3:04, only the 2 illegal immigrants emerged. They were down there for 2 whole hours. I can't even fathom what was going through Jocelyn's mind, the amount of fear she was feeling in the last moments of her life. Franklin Pena confessed that they had did something bad, the fact that they knew that their faces were exposed all over the news. They were trying to ask their boss for money so they could leave town. It was told, one of the illegal immigrants told the other one, after they were finished, to throw Jocelyn down in the bayou under the bridge to, quote unquote, get rid of any DNA. Individuals like that do not have a heart. They are nothing but monsters who are predators, and those are the kind of individuals that we so openly let in this country. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter. The program of the 2 illegal immigrants were enrolled to failed my daughter. I'm here to use my voice and raise awareness of how broken our country has become with these open border policies. My daughter should have been able to safely walk across to the store knowing that she was going to make it home. In regard to our open border failed policies, I have been working closely with Senator Ted Cruz to push the Justice for Jocelyn Act of 2024, which would require ICE to fill every single open detention center bed before releasing immigrants who entered the country illegally, and to have GPS monitoring tracking for certain immigrants with strict curfew hours, restricting them from being able to be out all hours of the night, and immediately be deported with who violates the terms of their release. My daughter, Jocelyn Nungare, was 12 years old. She was an innocent kid doing kid things. She did not deserve to have her life ripped away from her and our family. She had her entire life ahead of her. Because of these open border policies, I'll never get to see her start high school, go off to prom, walk down the aisle, get married, or have her own kids, or ever reach her full dreams. All of it's gone. I now and forever will continuously be her voice, and I will not stop fighting for Jocelyn. I come to you all as a grieving mother to please help make this country make a change for the greater good. This country needs to make a change. We need to properly secure our borders. We need to be able to have that security knowing we are safe in our own country. And most importantly, we need to protect our children. They are supposed to be our future. Thank you so much for your time and for the extra time. Thank you.
My name is Ann Fundner, and I'm a wife and a mother of 4 beautiful and amazing children. And I'm here to share the story about the devastating consequences that up real quick, of the Biden-Harris administration's open borders. I hope that by sharing my pain, others may be spared the same heartache. I want to tell you about my firstborn son, Weston. He was an extraordinary child. He was the best big brother. He was a sweet and loving son and a great friend to so many and a joy to everyone who knew him. We attended church. He loved football, hockey, surfing, had so many friends. He had a great heart of gold and a compassion for others that I've never seen on another person. He was always standing up for other people. My husband and I were fully involved in our children's lives, and Weston, like so many teenagers, he wanted to fit in. And during his 2nd semester of his freshman year in high school, at the early age of 15, he succumbed to a moment of peer pressure. He made one tragic mistake, and it took his life. And in February of 2022, our lives were shattered. Our firstborn son, my everything, he was gone. And his whole future and everything that we had prepared him for, all of our hopes and dreams, were stolen in that instant. And despite our best efforts and our conversations about the dangers of drugs, and our constant support, and our love for him, and he knew he was so loved, fentanyl claimed our son. But our kids are supposed to learn from their mistakes, and 20 years ago, this would not have killed my son. But they're dying from him. Kids today can't make mistakes. Fentanyl changes everything. Illicit fentanyl came over the open borders illegally that killed my son. It didn't give him the chance to learn from his mistake, and I hold Joe Biden and Kamala Harris responsible for my son's death. Their open border policies have led to this devastating crisis. Our tragedy could have been prevented if they had taken decisive action to protect Americans from fentanyl flooding over the borders. Instead, they've exacerbated this issue with their open border policies, and Vice President Harris, appointed to manage the border situation, and I have her tweet from March of 2021 that specifically says that she has been appointed to the border. And every Democrat, I hold Vice President Harris appointed to manage a border situation, and she has failed to act. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and every Democrat who supports these open border policies are complicit in the deaths of 300,000 innocent Americans, including my son, Weston. Say his name. Look at his picture. Since this administration took office, 300,000 sets of parents have had to bury their children. In 2021, till now, 300,000, and that doesn't include 2024. It's now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45, and it's rapidly becoming the #1 killer of teens, with 14 and under being the fastest growing demographic, and I can show you every day, babies are dying from this. Toddlers, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, your children, your grandchildren, and it can happen to anybody's children. President Biden, who knows the pain of loss and losing a child and has another child who has battled addiction, you would think that he would prioritize this issue, yet he remains absent. And Vice President Harris's March 23rd of 2021, her tweet claimed that she was appointed to address the border crisis. She acknowledged the difficulty of the task, but that it was a necessary one. However, for over 3 years, she has done zero to address this problem. The open borders are a matter of national security, and when this administration opened the borders, they gave operational control to the cartels who are operating a multi-billion-dollar business on American soil. I just want to say that, unregulated, tax-free. While not addressing the problem, it will continue to happen. I want to tell you how evil this drug is on our children. If your child tries fentanyl one time, it's not a matter of if they will die, it's a matter of when. The drug dealers are very well trained, and they're manipulative and predatory. They know it's 50 times more addictive than crack, and so if your child tries it once, they've got a customer. Withdrawal symptoms set in after one time of trying it. Within 2 to 3 hours, your child will be battling severe symptoms that we as adults could barely handle. And drug dealers, like groomers, convince your child that they can't tell their parents they've done something wrong. So they give them more. And now you have a child trying to deal with an addiction that they never wanted for the first time in their life. And for $7.50, you can deliver it to your front door, placed under a mat, where your child can deliver it to their front door on social media. Parents are finding their children dead in their beds, a place that should be their safe space of comfort, where they lay their heads at night. And in the morning, parents are waking up to this nightmare. And it's being supported by drug dealers, supported by the cartels, coming over our wide open borders.
This one.
Okay. I'm almost done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Few in this room can truly understand the depth of my pain, and unfortunately, too many families in America can. Weston is gone, and his death is a direct consequence of the decisions made by the Biden-Harris administration. The open borders have been allowed to persist and have led to tragedies like the one that I shared and shattered my family. I stand before you today to hold them and anyone who supports open borders accountable, and I implore you to take this to heart.
Thank you.
Let this be a catalyst for change, because the decisions that we make will prevent further tragedies, and save lives. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the extra time.
On July 27th, 2022, I received the worst news that a parent can ever get, that my newly 20-year-old daughter, Kayla Hamilton, was found deceased with injuries consistent with homicide. There are no words that describe the heart-wrenching, soul-crushing pain of losing your child so horrifically. Kayla was a happy and loving person. She loved life and God. She was extremely ambitious, and despite having autism, she was determined to make her way in this world. She loved animals, especially her cat Oreo, and cared about the homeless. At first, we knew very little details of the murder until an arrest. At the end of March of 2022, Walter Javier Martinez was apprehended by Border Patrol, crossing illegally into the U.S. Martinez stated that he was 16 years old and feared gang activity in his country in El Salvador. As an unoccupied alien child, Martinez was granted access into the United States with no background checks or vetting. Homeland Security did not verify the sponsor and allow Martinez to go live in Frederick, Maryland. There were behavioral issues with him living with the sponsor, and he ended up staying with his half-brother who lived in the same neighborhood, mobile park, as Kayla. There were behavioral issues with Walter, so the half-brother called the property manager, owners of the mobile home park, which I thought was a legit company. We learned that an illegal immigrant couple owned the mobile homes and took it upon themselves to allow this 16-year-old to rent a room in the same mobile home as Kayla. Martinez was living there less than 5 days before he violently and brutally murdered my daughter. Walter Javier Martinez broke into Kayla's room while she was sleeping that morning. Kayla left a voicemail on her boyfriend's phone. According to the voicemail, a struggle was going on, and Kayla can be heard crying, groaning, and struggling to breathe. Martinez can be heard on the voicemail hushing her, and near the end telling her, "I'm sorry," in Spanish, while strangling her with her phone charging cord. After she was deceased, Martinez tied her up and sexually assaulted her. This was confirmed by the annual swabs that matched Martinez's DNA. Kayla fought for her life that day. She had bruises up and down her arms, her fingers, the left side of her face, her back, and down her leg, and deep wounds to the neck from the charging cord. Local police knew right from the beginning he was the main suspect just by their initial investigation. It took the Aberdeen police to confirm that Martinez was a known gang member of MS-13 and that Martinez had a criminal record in El Salvador in 2020. If Homeland Security did a background check, then they would have known this, and Martinez wouldn't have been able to be on U.S. soil. With Martinez being 16 years old, Maryland Child Protective Services took custody of Martinez until the DNA results came back. The Aberdeen Police Department was very transparent to CPS. The Aberdeen Police Department demanded that Martinez be held in a secure location because he was a threat to society based on the murder and injuries of Kayla Hamilton. It was later learned that Child Protective Services placed Martinez in a group home with other children and then placed Martinez in a foster home, which allowed him to be enrolled in high school. This was also confirmed by an investigative reporter with Fox 45 Project Baltimore who got an actual confirmation from Edgewood High School. While in jail, a letter was intercepted that Martinez wrote, confessing to 4 murders and 2 rapes. Martinez ended up pleading guilty and taking the plea deal of 70 years. Since he was a juvenile at the time, even though he was tried as an adult, Martinez couldn't get life without the possibility of parole. This is not a political issue. This is a safety issue for everyone here living in the United States. Not only was Kayla's life put at risk and taken, so many other children and adults were at risk. The Biden-Harris administration is not putting the American citizens' safety first. The United States government must secure our border. We need to properly vet and background check all border crossers. This isn't about immigration. This is about protecting everyone here in the United States.
I have before me a written statement, but it's hard for me to read off a piece of paper, so I'm just going to share from my heart.
Yeah.
My daughter, 37-year-old woman, she has 5 children. On August 5th, she went for a walk on a trail in a small town. We live in a small town in Maryland. We've walked this trail for over 25 years as a family, so it was very familiar, very safe. She went for her daily run. She didn't come home that night. The next day, they went out looking for her. They found her, and I'm going to tell you what the court records have said. They found her badly beaten. She was strangled. She was raped. The medical examiner said she had bruises that blanketed her body. She had 10 to 15 head wounds, and she was stuffed into a drain pipe. I went to the funeral home because I had to decide if we could do an open casket for her, for our grandchildren, for our family. And you could tell from looking at my daughter that they had filled in all the holes with wax. They tried to straighten her broken nose and tried to align her face back the way that to look normal. And she was covered with makeup so thick it didn't even look like it was a human being. And I wasn't allowed to see from the neck down the rest of her body. This person is, we found out after an investigation, we had DNA that came off my daughter, DNA from a crime that he had committed in Los Angeles where he attacked a 9-year-old girl and the little girl's mom. It turns out that this man was an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. Tammy Nobles and I live in the same town that Tammy Nobles' daughter lives in Maryland. My daughter lived 15 minutes south of this town. An illegal immigrant, he crossed the border 3 times, was sent back. The 4th time, he was a got-away. If they had at any time did the cheek swab for the DNA, they would have known that this person had an Interpol warrant for his arrest for murdering a woman in El Salvador, which is why he was fleeing to America. After he murdered my daughter, he stayed in the same town where he murdered her, continued to work in restaurants, and changed his appearance. And we did a nationwide search. We did flyers, we did commercials, we've done everything, interviews, everything we could to keep her story alive, to tell the horrible thing that happened to my daughter. I wish there was a way to show you pictures of her and what she looked like, what the crime scene looked like. It's the most brutal crime that has happened in Maryland that they can even remember. Her children are having a hard time. All of us as a family are having a hard time. We have nightmares. And I want to tell you another story. This story happened, I'll make it really short, in 1975. There was a 14-year-old girl who was abducted from her house by a criminally insane man. She was kidnapped. She walked 60 miles towards the Canadian border with this man. No food, no water, walked through the woods. At night, she was raped multiple times. The parents and the police did not expect to find this girl, and if they did not expect to find her alive. I'm that teenager, and I can tell you that what I suffered as a teenager at the hand of a criminally insane man is nothing compared to the horrors that my daughter suffered. And it's because of these open borders. And I realize some of you are disinterested in this because you just think it's a partisan thing. But these are American people, these are American families, these are our children, and pretty soon they will be our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We need to close the borders. If I can survive a crime from an American citizen, these people that are coming over the border, if they're coming over illegally, it's because they have something to hide. Those that come here legally, they're doing the due process, which is necessary to protect them and to protect us. If they're coming over illegal, it's because they're hiding something. My grandparents were immigrants. They came into America at Ellis Island. They stayed at Ellis Island. They were vetted before they were allowed to come into the interior of the United States. I just left the southern border where I spoke to Border Patrol, and they showed me their gunshot wounds. They told me their stories about how they suffered broken necks, broken backs, fractured skulls. It's a war zone there, and we need to close it. We need to put those policies back into place that kept our citizens safe.